Welcome to Musicians versus the World, the podcast where we explore aspects of music and musician life that may not have been covered in music school. I am your host, Christine Smith. Today, we are talking with award-winning composer Sherri Chung. Sherri has been recognized internationally as a trailblazing composer for film and television. Her music transcends genre and fuses inspirations, both traditional and emerging, in support of filmmakers' visions worldwide. She has composed scores for shows including Riverdale, Blind Spot, and The Red Line. She is currently composing for HBO Max's animated series Gremlins, Secrets of the Mogwai, and most recently, Peacock's Based on a True Story, the upcoming Netflix feature film Happiness for Beginners, and NBC's Found, airing this fall. Not only a composer, Sherri is also a pianist, vocalist, performer, and songwriter. An active member of the film music industry, Sherri also serves as governor of the music branch of the Television Academy. So Sherri Chung, thank you so much for being here and welcome to Musicians versus the World.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here, Christine.
I am so excited to chat with you, and a big reason is I was reading one of the interviews that you did, and it said that one of your favorite films when you were 12 or 13 was Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and I read that and I thought, oh, I'm going to like her.
That score, yeah, Michael Kamen's score was like the thing that made me want to go into film and television music. So that was the pivotal one.
Isn't that funny how just like one thing can just kind of change the direction of your life?
It really is. It was kind of the first, I mean, I had seen movies before, but it was really the one that the score that I kind of realized I was like, what? I just hadn't heard that kind of storytelling in that way, and it was just so moving and so effective. And that probably, I guess, with the movie as well, just really moved me. So yeah, it's so true. It's like that one thing changed the course of everything, I guess.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. The music made the storytelling of that movie so effective, and the drama and the romance, everything in that score just heightened everything in that film.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Now, you were a pianist before that. You were a musician already, but that's not what you wanted to be doing for your life at that point?
I mean, I did actually, but I had around that same time. So I'm a classically trained pianist. So I think that, like whenever you're a musician and you're studying music, especially classical music, you're always aware of your composers. You're always aware that there is a job or an occupation that, is a composer, because you're always playing new music and it's always written up there. But I think at the time, for sure, when I was younger, I was like, wow, I want to be like a classical performer. What else would I be doing? And I loved to practice. It wasn't difficult for me. And I say that humbly, by the way, because I will say that when I was younger, I was very talented, but then I describe like my age caught up with my talent, and so by the time I'm in like high school or going to college, I'm not as impressive anymore because, it's just like people. So I say that with all humility, that the piano was definitely my thing. I bonded with it. I was good at it. But I went once I sort of realized like yeah, performing in that classical way is not for me. I had played in lots of bands. I was accompanying for choirs, accompanying in pit orchestras for music theater. So I knew that performing of a certain way was definitely my jam. But I had also started to be to get a lot more creative. And started to write things, and I was like, yeah, that really matters. Plus, it didn't help that I had like a really bad performance experience one time, like a classical performance experience. It's like, you know what, this isn't something I want to put myself through. But I mean, no, it was fine because it was about that same time that I heard Michael Kamen's score. So yeah, so I was already a musician, but knowing I wanted to do something in music, but not quite knowing exactly what, which you don't really have to know at 12 or 13. Honestly.
No, you definitely don't. And I think, at 30 or 40, sometimes people are still trying to figure out what to do with their music, to be honest.
That's okay.
Absolutely it is. So now when you went to school, you went for composition. You did not go for piano performance or jazz or anything. You knew you wanted to be a composer by that point.
Yeah, I did the very formal training, because again, at that age when I was like, Mom, Pa, I want to do this. And they're like, well, that's cute. What's that? What's film scoring? What is that? And it was one of those things where it's like I couldn't have been, maybe not geographically, but I couldn't have been further from being able to get into that field. And the internet wasn't then what it is now, and there was no Google search or YouTube videos or online courses or anything. And so finding out how to, figuring out how to do it, or how to get into it, became a journey, unto itself. And again, at that age, you're not really pursuing a career, at least this kind of career. I know there's lots of, kid professionals, but I was not one of them. But I definitely went through, I knew, I was like, yep, I'm doing film composing. And I applied to several schools. There were not that many programs then that were offering courses or curriculum, let alone degrees in film scoring. Berkeley in Boston was certainly one of them. And unfortunately, I did get in. Well, fortunately, I did get in, but unfortunately, for financial reasons, I couldn't go. So I decided to go, you know what, that's okay. I'm going to go to this school and I'm going to do composition and theory. So they did not have a film music program. They were dabbling little music technology courses at the time. So, but yeah, it was like I knew what I wanted to do. So I'm like, I'm going to go this like formal, stuffy route. It was kind of the only thing I knew, and I'm glad that I did. I mean, I think it worked out. And then I did eventually go to graduate school out here in Los Angeles, at University of Southern California for their kind of prestigious film scoring,
Yes.
film scoring graduate degree. So that was
Yeah.
that was my path.
So a little bit of a roundabout path, but not really. Do you feel like that traditional, do you find like the classical and all of the theory background helps you as you're composing now? Or do you feel like music's changed so much that you don't use that very much?
No, 100%. I feel like that is exactly the right path for me. And when people ask me, like, what's your advice for people getting into it? Education is certainly not the only way. Like a formal education is certainly not the only way. There's lots of successful, wonderful composers that just don't go that route. But I strongly advise it because I think of myself first and foremost as a composer. Like I'm first a composer and then I'm a film composer. And that's the way I see it for basically what it is. Like I'm not going to say that I'm going to speak for everybody, but that to me is what it is. I feel like that being a film and television composer is a craft unto itself. That is, that it's just such a different. It's a tiny little niche of a profession, and to me, I'm drawing upon
Right.
the foundation of music, the foundation of theory and voice leading. And look, we don't. Your question is really interesting because music in film and television has absolutely changed. Obviously, yes, we all know John Williams, we all love his scores, and all Jerry Goldsmith, Alan Silvestri, Danny Elfman, all of these people that their music is pretty solid on paper. It's pretty solid on paper, which is not something that everybody learns. But there's many scores that don't need they don't need that big orchestral sound. Maybe need some synths or some hybrid or just some things that don't have to be so musically layered or complex in a theoretical way. So you're right about that, but I still think for me, I'm drawing upon all of those good, um, that good foundation. And I feel like because it works, orchestration for me also works sonically. So when you're doing something that's even synth based, you have like, if something gets too muddy in the bottom, that's the same thing as like an orchestration. You've got too many things on the bass, or you've got too many rhythms. So to me, it's like the same thing. It's like, why does it sound like crap? Oh yeah, because because my frequencies are all muddied up. And so to me, all of that is orchestration, and it's all, again, foundation that started in that formal training.
Mm-hmm. And it trains your ear as well. So you can see, you're like, okay, I do know why this is muddy because your ear has been trained
Yeah.
throughout all of that
And,
too.
and frankly,
So,
like, sorry, I was gonna say that, and frankly, like bigger orchestral stuff is something that I love to do. So I don't know whether it's like chicken egg, where it's like I learned it and therefore I really like to do it, or I really love doing it and good thing I learned it. That, and that's not for everybody. So some people don't. They're like, no, I don't want to do that kind of stuff. So and there are certain types of scores that I'm not going to be called for, and I'm not going to go after either. So again, it doesn't have to be for everybody. But I think you're right. It's trained my ear. It's trained my approach to writing. And in certain ways, my approach to how I would write for a scene as well.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, when you were in school, did you gravitate more towards like the tonal sort of sound, or were you more kind of atonal, more experimental training when you were like learning the composition?
I mean, we certainly had that tree. We had the atonal. We had that stuff. But I have
Yeah.
to tell you, to me, it was very difficult to listen to. I was
Yeah.
not I was not bored enough with with tonal music to really want to hear. I mean, yeah, I mean, honestly, I mean, it's great because a lot of it comes about because of curiosity and figuring out,
Yeah.
hey, I kind of already know this. How can we do it differently? So no, I was definitely not as much of an experimental person. I think the most experimental I got really was when I got to working like in like with student films. Once I got to graduate school, then I was like, oh, now I just felt like, oh, I've explored not everything, but I've certainly explored enough where I'm like, I'm really curious, or visually I'm really inspired by this thing. I wonder if I could, be a bit more experimental and broaden my own, comfort zone.
Yeah.
But in undergrad,
Yeah.
no, I was
And
like books and academia, and it's got to be like this, and I,
and counterpoint and four-part harmony, and
all of
we're
those
gonna
things exactly. And
Yeah, no, I was just wondering that because I have heard lately a little bit more experimentation in music in film scores, and so I didn't know if you were kind of like leaning into that or if you liked the more lush sort of soundtracks.
and I think now I am like, in terms of the projects that I'm being asked to go for, and the projects that I'm being, fortunate enough to get. And some of them certainly are, grounded in much more sort of this muscular orchestral writing, and some of them are just like, no, we really want to mess it up, like messy it up, kind of, So it's, I mean, I'm kind of inspired by all of it, but I would say I gravitate more towards. I mean, to be honest, I kind of gravitate towards projects that are sort of left of center, which isn't to say that my music would be a little bit left of center, but the projects themselves, I do think are. I'm a little more curious about those ones that kind of need the score to be something a little different, or play something a little bit differently than something that's more straightforward.
Yeah, I like how you're describing this about how the visual really guides you, and the visual really like can guide you to go somewhere or to be more experimental than you would just listening to something. You might enjoy listening to something when it's paired with a visual than maybe just sitting and listening to it. Do you want to kind of expand a little bit on that? Like, what is it about the visuals that makes you decide to go in another direction?
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if it's that case with like a lot of people. I mean, this is kind of one of the reasons that we as audience members will watch a television show or a movie, and why we get moved, and why all those things when we see something and then we hear something and we're like, oh yeah, I can relate to that, or that's profound or something. I mean, I feel like in those moments I feel almost like a pure audience member when I'm working on a project for the first time, or even in cases where it's a lot earlier, I don't have the project yet, and sometimes I have to read scripts, and I don't particularly like to read. So reading scripts are like, I mean, I can read, but I don't. For some reason, I don't get as much enjoyment out of reading something. And then certainly when it comes to scripts, it always looks
Right.
this way in my head. And then and
Yeah.
then if I start to work on the project, or I see, I'm like, oh, let's throw all those ideas out because it looks completely different. I
Yeah.
do think that I mean, I think just naturally visually stimulated in that way. And when I see a picture and I see a project, and again, for reasons of wanting to work on it. I mean, I'm trying to figure out if I were to go out and take a hike, would I hear music playing in my head all the time? I don't know. I don't think it's always like that. I don't think it's like, yes, there's always a score. There's an orchestra behind me all the time. But certainly when it comes, it sounds kind of fun. Um,
I'd love it.
I yeah, I think there should always be like a tuba or a trombone following me or something, or an accordion, at least an accordion. I
An
think
accordion.
yeah. But yeah, I'm visually informed, and I think that and not just visually, but I mean not only just image, but color as well. Because even when working on animation before, sometimes I've not gotten it's either been in animatic form, so there's no color at all, it's just like moving sketches, and then other times, and then we're in various stages between that and like fully finished, coloring and color timing and all of those things, and it can be so different. It can be so different, and which isn't to say that like, oh, I have no ideas. It's my ideas are just differently informed. So like when and oftentimes they'll say, hey, I'll ask, can you send me the mood board? Can you send me the color the color board? Can you send me the costumes so I can see what the characters are wearing and the colors that we're going for? And in the case of Gremlins, Secrets of the Mogwai, it was visually a lot kind of darker. Like it was just, I mean, like
Yes.
tonally, story wise, it's pretty dark show. I mean, it's a great show. It's great, but it goes pretty dark. But in terms of like
Right.
hues and colors, it was darker than I had originally thought it was. I thought it was, oh, just going to be like happy, whatever, and bright colors. And it's not. It's not. It's very colorful, but they're not bright hues. So all of that to me just really informs, again, how does that translate to instruments? I mean, I don't, it's all subjective. It's all subjective, right? So it's like, oh, for me, a darker tone might mean a darker color tone might mean a darker, deeper tone in the orchestra. But in other cases, I've gone like opposite and gone really, really high, something that's, much more tinny and much more thin, which, I don't know. It just kind of depends on, it also depends what's going on in the picture, but for sure, it's very informative. And I get all kinds of ideas and, can throw out those ideas because, that's not going to work as well. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. That is interesting. I was actually hoping that we could talk a little bit about Gremlins because that was iconic films, absolutely iconic films, and people know the music and they know it's good. They know the story really, really well. And now you're taking that, animating it, taking it to another part of the world, and it's like this epic adventure. It's not just in a small town or in New York. It's like somewhere completely else. How did you approach that and kind of honor the original source material, but at the same time do something new? How did you do that?
I mean, yeah, there was no pressure whatsoever to, to follow in those footsteps. Um, but honestly, Z Chun, who is the creator of this animated prequel to the movies, um, gave me that permission. He actually said, of course I know the movies. Joe Dante is one of the consulting producers on the show, and of course I know the movies, and of course we all know what the audience maybe wants or feels, but we do want to pay homage. We do want to tap into some of that. We want to use some of Jerry's work. Um, Even for them in the writing of it, we want to definitely stick with certain, legend and myth. But we are doing our own thing. This is a prequel. This is meant to set things up. This is not meant to be a continuation of what we already know. This is meant to kind of deliver us into the world that um, Joe Dante and Amblin and all of them did. So because of that permission, it was kind of like, okay, cool, I get that permission with the music as well. And they wanted it
Oh,
very
good.
dramatic. They wanted to lean into the emotion. And at first I thought the emotion was, the heartfelt moments. Sam and his family, Gizmo and the friends and Elle and all that. But they actually meant also all of the other emotions of the horror, of the fear, of the adventure, of
Yeah.
Sam's struggle to do the right thing. I mean, there's psychological torture in this thing. You know what I'm saying, with Riley Green. I mean, it goes pretty full throated into this. But I also kind of realized that that's the Amblin way. Like that's the Amblin, that's what all those movies did, and that's why I think a lot of us who grew up in them, or those of us who will still watch them, were so moved by it because it's really immersive. So to get back to your question, I mean, all of those things were things that I thought in my head. A lot of it was I was given permission. I was asked. The assignment, if you will, was you know check. Definitely there are places where we want to use Goldsmith, and then there's definitely places where we it's not that we don't want to hear that, but we want it to be its own thing.
Hmm.
The only two things that I've used of Jerry Goldsmith's was the Gremlin rag, dun, 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 which
Hmm.
they wanted an arrangement for the main title and end credits, which was super fun to do. So that's like
Right.
verbatim what he wrote. I just did an arrangement with different instrumentation, and then Gizmo's lullaby, doo, doo,
Oh.
and so there's a lot of times
Hmm.
where Gizmo and then some of the other actors and characters will sing, some of the other Mogwai will sing that song throughout the season. And kind of in those moments, that's when I, put it in the score and in the orchestra. But for the most part, it really truly is, you know, something that I was trying to, I guess, stay in the same vein, but, different melodies, different ways of doing it. And, you know, I, if yeah, I guess sort of cut from the same cloth, but I have to say I didn't. I mean, we did actually have a conversation about, do we make this an 80s synth thing? Is this, I mean, which the first movie really was. Um, and we all kind of agreed that that didn't really make sense here, that wasn't going to be the right feel that was going to carry the emotion and the adventure of what they had in store for the stories. Another big thing that I can't believe I didn't start with this one, but another big thing was, because it's in Shanghai, because we're in 1920s, not even so much the 1920s part, but because the 1920s part was more visual for them and more story wise for them. But the Shanghai thing was, they really wanted a presence of Chinese music. They really wanted that to be there. So there's even some diegetic things that I was also doing. So things that were like coming from the streets and coming from the circus, that they wanted the Asian influence. They wanted the Chinese. They wanted it to be, um, as authentic as made sense for the moment, which is really, so I did use an erhu. Well, I didn't play. I used a wonderful player named Karen Han, and she's like the erhu player. I started this project during pandemic, so we actually did a couple of Zoom lessons, and by Zoom lessons, she was teaching me how to write and how not to write, basically for the air, just saying, here's the range, here's the agility, here is what the instrument can do, here's some works that she's performed, and she's even said, go look at other erhu players, because what you need to know about erhu, is that these are performances, these are not takes. Let's do another take. It's like, this is a performance. And oftentimes the instrument is so much felt. I absolutely wrote for it, but in terms of even dynamics or how she might want to shape a phrase, yes, we are doing it to picture. So yes, she's very familiar with playing to click, playing to something that's very steady, track, if you will. But even then, where she chose to embellish notes or do little turns or do little, trills or something, was always just something that was felt. I would never write any of those things in there for her, because she probably ignored them anyway. She just do what she would, would feel. So that, and some Chinese flutes, and then some Chinese percussion as well. And again, it's largely a fully orchestral, more grounded in like Western harmonies and scales and that kind of thing, but with that influence in it as well. Yeah.
Okay. So did you do the orchestration first and record that first, and then record the erhu on top of it so she had more freedom, or did you have her first and then orchestrate around her performance?
No. Everything was written and orchestrated, and sometimes she would record first, sometimes the orchestra would record first. That was just more logistics,
okay.
Who's available, that kind of thing. But no, no, it was always written first, and then she.
Okay.
So there was a part of it where she would have to sort of conform her, her performance into the context of what was already there and what already existed.
Yeah, but she's so wonderful at that and has so much experience. I'm sure she had no problem with that.
She's played on every score that has used erhu. I mean, like Kung Fu Panda to oh gosh, just huge ones. I mean, she's played on absolutely everything. So I think this was a little bit small fry for her, but and she's also done. It's great because she's also done a lot of on-screen playing as well, and she's just an amazing performer in the concert world as well. So it's one of the. So I mean, I lucked out, because when you work with a specialist that way, more time is needed to give them, that that exploration, because they're a specialist in what they're doing. But it's also, she made everything easier for me, because, she'll make anything sound good. And that really goes with all the musicians that I worked with. I was very lucky in that way.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that you gave them excellent material to work with, and I'm sure they were happy to play your music. So can we switch gears just a little bit? I'm really interested in your work with the Television Academy and the Music Peer Group. Can you explain a little bit about what that is and what your role is in that organization?
Yes. So a lot of people have heard of the Emmys. Some people haven't necessarily heard that the Emmys isn't just an organization. It actually belongs to the Television Academy. So if you, and just to provide a little bit of perspective, the Grammys comes from the Recording Academy, and the Oscar comes from Motion Picture Academies. And so back to the Emmys, it comes from the Television Academy. So the Television Academy has, I believe, 32 different branches, and those branches are basically covering the different professions in our specifically television industry. So You'll have picture editors, you'll have sound editors, you'll have actors, producers, directors, documentary. I'm missing a bunch, and then you do have music, and music falls under, this. It's kind of a large thing, and within the music branch, we have composers who are scoring for picture, which, and again, we're talking specifically about television here, so television. But then you also have music supervisors that work in television. You have music directors, and then you also have songwriters, lyricists, that kind of thing. So all of those different professions are just all into one group, and that's the music branch. And I think we have maybe 600 members or something like that, and just in the music branch. So there's quite a few of us, and it's growing. It's the number is growing all the time. And I actually could be wrong about that. We might actually have a few more numbers in that. I haven't looked lately, and it does change. But each peer group, each branch is sort of led, if you will, by 2 governors and a peer group executive committee. And that, so it's just like a group of peers that will just come together, and so we'll all sit around and we'll talk about Emmy rules, or we talk about suggestions for applying, for the Emmys, that sort of process. And all this is taken to the governors, and the governors. So I have a co-governor, and then we go into board meetings and the boardroom, and we go ahead and we discuss these things, and we talk about, we vote on all kinds of things. And it's not just about the Emmys too. I mean, there's a great outreach program. There's a lot of DEI programs, and that, there's an intern program. Did I mention that? There's education. There's all kinds of things, ways that it's giving back to the community, ways that we're trying to bring up newer professionals, as well as supporting the professionals that are already there. So it's a little bit of a political position, which just kind of surprised me to go, because I'm very opinionated, and I can be diplomatic, but I wouldn't call myself a political person by any stretch. But a lot of this really it's definitely a service. It's definitely a volunteer position. And to be honest, I'm actually proud to say that I'm the first female governor of the music branch. Not the first female governor. There's actually been many female governors, but it's specifically of the music branch. And so that's kind of, wow, I guess, a little bit, it's kind of
it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool. I mean, it's something like, I don't know what to make of it, but it's cool. We're turning the ship, it's all good. But a lot of it is just, again, it's just representing, hearing people, just being supportive and hearing people's concerns, putting your ear to the ground, listening to what our peer group wants for our organization, and then figuring out ways to help us incorporate those, or better, better design certain things. And there's also there's mixers and everything, where we'll try to get composers mixed in with picture editors or music supervisors, or those kinds of things as well. So all kind of trying to help our members, help our composers and songwriters and music directors and all that.
Wow. And it's volunteer, huh?
And it's volunteer. It's a lot of work.
I was just thinking,
especially around Emmy season, but it's really cool, and it's fascinating, and again, I actually feel great about it, because I have a lot of I've been here long enough where I have a lot of composer friends, and so a lot of them I feel as though they can reach out to me with concerns or questions, or be like, and I've just heard a lot of great feedback, like, hey, we're so happy to have you in one of those seats, because you're doing it. Like, I feel relevant. I feel of what's happening. I feel like grounded in what the industry kind of is, and and it's great when people reach out and give me their opinions, good or bad.
Yeah. Opinions are helpful. Now, so there's education, there's mixers, there's and then of course there's the Emmys, and you're helping get all of this happening and all of this rolling and running smoothly. So how does someone get involved in this organization, in the Television Academy? Do they have to have television credits and then they're invited in, or is this something they apply to? What's kind of the process of someone joining?
Yes, you need a certain number of credits and type of credits, and then you can apply, and then it's reviewed by and there's an amazing staff, like a full-time staff, like permanent staff at the Academy, that are just I want it to be known that we are like the governors are incredibly supported, and we are doing, um, in some ways, nothing compared to what what the full time staff is doing. But yeah, if somebody wants to be involved, somebody wants to be a member, and you're a working composer, or as of all the other professions that I mentioned, you can certainly go online, and you can see what the criteria is, and it's different for each peer group, for each branch. It's different for each profession, because obviously there's different, there's the requirements would naturally be different because the jobs are naturally different. But in music, it's a certain number of credits or amount of credits, and you submit that cue sheet, you submit your application, and it's reviewed, and we're always trying to keep membership up. So it's not what I would call, it's not some sort of elitist, you know and there's also different tiers of
Yeah.
membership, and you can actually be, if you're a full member, then you're also considered a voting member, and then you can vote
Hmm.
on the Emmys, and you can vote for that kind of thing. But if you there's also a associate status, where you're a member but you don't have quite enough credits, but you have some credits, not quite enough, and then so you can still be a part of it, and you can still have access to the benefits, and any of the mixers, or any of the uh, excuse me, what do you call it, like workshops, or seminars, like that kind of thing. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's very welcoming. It's very welcoming. Like we don't want to be snooty about about it.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So you said that around Emmy season is when it gets really, really busy, and we're kind of it's a weird Emmy season this year, but like, what are some of the things that usually happen that keep you busy around Emmy time?
Yeah, there's a lot of reviewing of submissions. Um,
Hmm.
there's more and more, understandably, there's more and more submissions each year, just because there's just more and more
Right.
television shows.
Right.
Um, I'm curious if in the Oscars, in the Motion Picture Academy, I'm curious if those numbers have remained sort of steady, because even in the streaming world, any film that didn't get released in the theater is actually eligible in the Emmys as a separate category of, I think it's limited series or special. So special would be like a movie special. So it wasn't in the theater, which means it's now eligible for, Emmys. I don't know for the Motion Picture Academy. I don't know what the criteria is, but all this to say, more and more and more every year, there are just a ton of more applications, and so the governors do not review all of the applications. Again, that's done by the incredible staff of the academy. But every now and then, there's just a couple of outliers and things that say, "Gosh, we're not really sure. This is kind of on the line or on the cusp of whatever our rules or regulations are." And then it goes immediately to the governors, and the governors make that decision based on, again, knowing the profession, knowing the industry, knowing what it takes to do our jobs. And so sometimes we have to review that. We're also reviewing applications for membership during that same time. And the governors are also all together, as a collective, and the staff are responsible for planning, for planning the Emmys, which is just really done all year round. So and so there's, we even have like an AI task force now, and we're now like jumping into figuring out where the academy stands, and how can we help our membership, and how can we get clarity for ourselves, and how can we educate ourselves. So again, it's always changing with the times, and governors are always a part of those discussions,
Yeah.
and involved in that. So during Emmy season and not, it's it's kind of always a
Yeah.
rotating, body of work that we're constantly doing, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
important. It's really important.
So how does this work? So then everyone submits music for their scores for these Emmys, and then it's reviewed, and then a certain number are nominated, and then that goes out to the voting public
No,
or the
the
voting
voting
body.
begins with all the submissions. So the peer groups are allowed to, the individual peer groups will vote on their branch. So all of the music nominations come from the music peer group only. Then when they're nominated, that then goes out to, all of the branches. So anyone who's a member of the academy, whether you're a picture editor or a music or part of the music branch, you can vote on music. We can all vote on, outstanding director, outstanding comedy, outstanding actor or actress, So the entire Academy will vote on all of the categories when it comes time for the win. But in terms of the nominations, that comes from the peer group.
Right. Okay. Okay. And as governor, do you kind of step back and say, okay, I'm not submitting anything for Emmys? Because would that be weird? Or do you get nominated while you're
No,
still
I
governor at
absolutely
the same time?
submit. Yeah, no. There's never a conflict. I mean, if there's a conflict, I mean, you can vote for yourself. you know, you can totally vote for yourself, and you know what, you should vote for yourself
You
because there's no
should, yes.
guarantee. But yeah, it's not. No, I mean, I don't. The dog I have in that fight is my own project, but I have no sway or say. I have no power really. Governors really have no
Okay.
power.
Oh, that's great. So where do you see the Academy going for music? I know you said there's lots of things going on with AI, and there's lots of changes always in the industry. What direction would you like to go? Do you have something that you're focusing on that you really want to see improvement?
Yeah, I really value the integrity of the Emmys itself and the Academy, and it would kind of be my goal to sort of continue maintaining that high standard. I do think that sometimes naturally, when we get more and more content, we have more and more voices that are just a different approach, and that's wonderful. There's no but to that. I think in addition to that, what you also get is there's a lot, and some of it's really great, and some of it's not as great, and some of it, and so I just think it's I would like to help maintain the integrity of the award and what we value in our industry. And that's incredibly subjective, and I can't control that. But some of the ways that I would like to see more the Academy, not doing more necessarily, but just having that sort of resource of like, what do we value as an Academy? What do we in terms of our standards of work? And so and starting with my own peer group, I'm not going to speak for the other peer groups with music. It's like, what do we value? What are our standards? And so I'm currently trying to, working with the other, like the music supervisors and the songwriters and lyricists and the music directors, and getting them to say like, hey guys, what do you value in your profession? How should we be voting? How should we be judging your work or listening to your work or reviewing your work? What do you value in your work? And so I think there's ways to do that, and that's certainly something. And then with the AI stuff, man, I would like to get to a place where we're not all just scared about it, and I'm still nervous about it because I think a lot of us are still nervous about it because we just don't know, what does it mean? Do we lose jobs? Do we lose integrity? Do we lose standards? All of those things. We all have the questions across every profession. And so again, I'm very I'm kind of proud and like honored to be on that forefront, because I actually also believe that, and our film and television industry isn't always about awards, but let's face
Right.
it's they can mean something for a studio or for a network or for an actor or for a musician. We
Yes.
value this hardware, we value it, so because
Yes.
of it, it's it creates standards in how productions are made, or projects are made. And so I do think it's interesting that wherever the Recording Academy lands, which they have landed, they've taken a pretty hard stance on how they feel about AI. Wherever the Motion Picture Academy lands, wherever we as a Television Academy land, wherever we land in terms of how we want to place value on AI, and therefore allow AI into, I do think that starts to can set a standard to how studios proceed. Well, if this work is not going to be accepted into, for this reason, because it has, I don't know, I don't know any of these, what the rules are, but if it's not going to be accepted for that reason, then we might have to not use AI in this way, because then this won't be eligible. So, and again, this is, I also want to be really clear and go on record by saying I am not speaking for the academy. This governors don't speak for the academy, and everything that I'm talking about too can be found on the website. You know, if you wanted to sift through all the things of how these things work, or come be a member, and you can find it out then too. But it is something that yeah, I feel like a lot of the governors are probably thinking the same way. We want to do no harm, or we want to continue the really great work that the academy is doing. And I think that AI is we're just in such an interesting time. And AI has actually been around for a while. I mean, we use it in our visual effects. We use it in lots of other areas that I'm not even really aware of, to be honest. But I realize it's also generative AI that we're all sort of, kind of thing.
Right.
But I'd love to educate,
Yes, yes.
personally, I'd love to educate myself more about what it is, if for anything, to keep my enemies closer. But just like, and you know what? I think it could also be a useful tool. It doesn't have to be
Right.
a threatening thing. It could be a very useful tool. And who doesn't want that? you know? So,
Yeah. We just don't know right now, and that's the scary thing is we don't
yes,
know what direction it's going to.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. Well, I hope that you'll keep in touch with us and let us know when the
Yeah.
governors have decided and when the academy's decided what their standards are going to be with AI, because I think everybody is feeling kind of a little bit excited and trepidatious at the same
Yeah.
time. I
Yeah.
think I really do. Really do. Well, Sherri, this has been so wonderful to chat with you. I have just so enjoyed just hearing your stories, hearing all about your wonderful work on the creative side and on helping your fellow composers. As we finish up, do you have any other advice that you haven't mentioned yet that you'd like to give to aspiring musicians or aspiring composers?
Yeah. You know what? I've got like one little soundbite but then I actually wanted to say something else that's a little bit sounding a little more encouraging. But the whole idea of like do the work, don't be a jerk. But that more goes for like, when you're on a project. It's like just do do the work. Like be humble. Just do what your job is, do what your art is, do what your craft is. Um, and don't be mean. We don't have to be egotistical about it, especially if and then I will say this on a more positive way. If you're wanting to get into the film and television industry, there's room for everybody. It's an exciting and fulfilling career, but I will say it's also one of service. It is not about your ego. It is not about what you want to write. It is about what you want to write, but it's what you want to write within parameters that are given and, you know, at the very least had a conversation about by your people who are hiring you. But I will say that if you're out there and wanting and you're just like, how the heck do I even get into it? How do I break into it? It's it's both harder and easier in my opinion than it was when I started. Again, I went the education route, and because of that, I was sort of delivered into a system. That doesn't mean I didn't have to hustle, but I started out as an assistant. Then I went on as an orchestrator. And then I went on as an additional writer, and then I was starting to gain visibility, and then I was able to get more and more projects that people had heard of. I was always getting projects, but no one had heard of them. But student films, I mean, there's always people who are needing music. There's always people who are needing music, and start small. It's not too late. It's never too early, I think. Um, and I would also say that you do have to have some patience. You have to have a lot of patience, and you have to have a lot of persistence, and you have to have a lot of luck. I mean, I don't think we should discount that the timing is a lot, is everything in here. But all this to say, um, try and get involved with anybody who might be needing music, even if it's not to picture. Get used to working with somebody who's giving you a direction. Saying like, hey, my my kid's school, my preschool, my kid is in preschool and they're putting on a play, and we really want some music for this. You write music, right? Do you want to do this? It sounds maybe god awful, but you should try it. You should do it if you know what I'm saying? Because your ability to work with somebody and collaborate and say, hey, I want music and it needs to be in the style of, and we have this story, and then we need to actually pause the music here because then we need to have this, and then we need to have really crazy music while the kids get changed or some. I mean, you would not believe how important it is to be able to craft your music around parameters that are not ideal. or your own, because that is, this industry is 100% about that, about crafting your music around the necessity of something that has nothing to do with music at all. So if you can get involved in any way, shape, or form with somebody who needs music written for something, whether it's picture or not, you should try doing it. And then from there, I promise, good work begets good work. Good word leads to good word, and you'll get that other one. You'll get that next one. Oh my gosh, so and so did this. And that will happen, and then it will just fire off a chain of events, and then you can even start steering it better, But put up the sail, catch some wind somewhere, and just start moving, and then you can maybe figure out where you want to move to.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you so much for that advice, and thank you so much for your time. Honestly, it's been such a joy chatting with you, and I just appreciate you coming and talking with me today.
Thank you so much, Christine. I really appreciate it, and thank you for the great questions. It's always fun to talk about oneself. Everyone likes to talk about themselves. No, but I really appreciate it. It's such a pleasure.